ਮੇਰੇ ਤਾਂ ਗਿੱਟੇ ਗੋਡੇ ਸਭ ਦੁਖਦੇ ਪਏ ਨੇ।
ਜਦੋਂ ਮੇਰੀ ਉਮਰ ਦੀ ਹੋਵੇਂਗੀ ਫੇਰ ਦੇਖਾਂਗੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਹੁਲਾਰੇ।
2 ਸਾਲ ਵੱਡੀ ਹਾਂ ਤੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ।
ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਤੰਦਰੁਸਤੀ ਦਾ ਰਾਜ ਕੀ ਹੈ?
ਮੈਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦੀ ਸਲਾਹ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੈਸਕਾਨਾ ਫਾਰਮੇਸੀ ਤੋਂ ਜੁਆਇੰਟ ਫਾਰਮੂਲਾ ਅਰਥਰਾਈਟਿਸ ਲਿਆ ਤੇ ਟੱਲੀ ਵਰਗੀ ਹੋ ਗਈ।
ਭਰੋਸਾ, ਗਿਆਨ ਅਤੇ ਤਜਰਬਾ ਹਰ ਮਰੀਜ਼ ਦਾ ਹੱਕ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਇਹ ਹੱਕ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਿਰਫ ਵੈਸਕਾਨਾ ਫਾਰਮੇਸੀ ਹੀ ਦਿਲਾਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਕੋਈ ਸ਼ੱਕ?
ਹਾਊ ਵੀ ਕੈਨ ਅਵੇਕਨ ਆਰ ਟਰੂ ਨੇਚਰ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਦਾ ਸਹੀ ਪਹਿਚਾਨ ਆਪਣੀ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਨੇ ਆ। ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲਿਟੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮਨ ਤੋਂ ਜੋਤ ਸਰੂਪ ਹੈ, ਆਪਣਾ ਮੂਲ ਪਛਾਣ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਇਹ ਮੂਲ ਹੈ ਕੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਚਾਨਣਾ ਹੈ, ਆਓ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੁਝ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕੈਲੀ ਨਾਲ। ਸੋ question is that shame can be healed, but it's a simple connection between you and your God, whatever you believe in. But right now what we find is a lot of middlemen come in the way and they try to sway you here and there and then try to further, instead of taking you out of that shame or guilt factor, they further instill those kind of things in you. And that is why we are finding today that a person might get influenced for some time, but it is not reflected in the character. In the four walls of a temple or a church, there when we go, we become pious, we listen, we get influenced, but that is not reflected. So how to reach that inner nature whereby we can continue this in our daily life?
Well, I think it's a matter of individuals taking on this path of healing
Right.
ourselves, and we need to create safe environments where we are allowed to be truthful.
Right.
To say this is what's really happening. I don't like it, I wish it weren't, but this is the truth.
Right.
This is where I want to be, and let's walk together in supporting each other, because I don't think any of us can really do this in isolation.
Right.
You know, we're all in this together. I think couples are a very powerful place, you know, within marriages,
Right.
to take on that healing work together. I think a lot of change can happen.
Right.
I think within families, when parents change the way we speak to our children and move away from a shaming approach
Right.
to more of a teachable approach, that our authority is used in service of the child's moral development
Right.
and spiritual development.
So as a master facilitator, your observation dealing with the hundreds of people whom you facilitate them to come back and realize your own self. What is your observation? What do you feel? When you talk about that shame, guilt, and also finding the true inner nature, but you talked about the safe environment.
Yeah.
Do people find that safe environment, or that also is again it's a temporary phase and they cannot repose faith in someone for a long time?
Well, it's about relationships. We have to change the way we're relating to
Right.
one another. And you know, we have the benefit of education. You know, the science of psychology is a very infant science,
Right.
but we do have the benefit of that now. We're learning what impact harsh and critical communication has on each other.
Right.
So we need to create these environments where we're learning to communicate better. We're starting with a spirit of respect and compassion, listening to one another.
Right.
Really learning, being curious, you know, that we're all in this together, that I'm responsible for myself and myself only.
Right.
And you're responsible for yourself and yourself only. And that's a very powerful concept.
Right.
Because if I'm concerned about what you're doing, then I'm probably judging you,
Right.
and I'm not looking at myself. You know?
Right.
So we all need to be accountable for our own cleaning up our lives. And it's really a new endeavor that we're on. I mean, we see these groups coming together. For example, the 12-step programs of recovery are
Right.
very good examples of where people are coming together in a safe environment to heal what's going on for them.
Right.
And to tackle some of these very difficult issues of addiction. So that's a good example.
Right.
But we need to create more and more environments. And
Right.
Virtues Project workshops and seminars of any kind
Right. Do help.
And support that healing process, and people to see the best in themselves,
Right.
and take a fresh approach to their spiritual lives.
Okay, so here, Kelly, the foundation has to be your self-esteem. You can only jump into this arena if you are strong enough to take the decision and you have some kind of dignity. How important is it? What is your your experience that when we talk about self-esteem and dignity, what should be the foundations in these that you remain intact and you don't get influenced again by the negative forces and then you jump back into those other things?
So dignity is a very important concept, I believe, because it describes an aspect of ourselves as spiritual beings.
Right.
So we are noble. We have a nobility
Right.
about ourselves. And it's very important that becomes a guiding factor for us. What is going to uphold my dignity and what is going to remove it?
Right.
Or at least bring me down. So this becomes a way of helping us make decisions.
Right.
It gives us clarity if we just hold that as something in front of ourselves.
Right.
I want to maintain my dignity. And so anything that takes me off that, I need to not choose it. I need to set a boundary around it.
Right.
And there's so many things in the world today that takes us off ourselves that way. So it's really important that we hold that as a, like I said, as a compass in a way.
As a constant reminder also that yes, I have to maintain that dignity. Self-dignity is must.
Yeah.
What happens generally? Yeah, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The other piece that goes along with that is our capacity for discernment.
Okay.
Our capacity to reflect
Right.
and know right from wrong. We all have it.
Oh yeah.
If we're deep into our lower selves, sometimes our capacity for discernment gets clouded.
Right.
And so there's a process of, clearing out the clutter, if you will, so that we can see clearly
Right.
with that spiritual eye, really is what it is. It's a capacity for discernment to say what is
Right, and
good
what
for
is-
me and what is not.
Now, when we talk about dignity, and again, it's a human nature that we always try to present ourselves to others the best. Physically, mentally, emotionally, we try and project as if we are the best. But why is it that when it comes to, we forget that the biggest friend or foe is you yourself? And unless you have that kind of dignity which you are trying to pretend and show to others, you be your own judge and let that inner voice be your judge. And if you are submitting yourself to that, then life can be really great.
Yes, it can. But I think, like I said, we're all struggling with the materialism. Most of us are off track.
Right.
I'd like to get into an issue that I think has a huge impact on all of us in
Sure.
terms of our sense of shame or our sense of dignity.
Right.
And that is who we are as men and women.
Right.
This goes back to having two natures, our physical nature and our spiritual nature.
Right.
Part of that physical nature is that we're sexual beings.
Right.
And this is an area that most people get into a lot of trouble. And that the culture and the time that we're living in right now
Right.
takes us off course. So I'd like to spend some time talking about that because I think this
Sure,
is
definitely.
a very critical issue that impedes us. It stops us from really moving forward with ourselves.
That's right. And that is one of the major reasons that today in the society, what we are finding, that men and women, gone are the times when they used to live for their whole life together, but right now, there are so many issues in the families which are creating lots of troubles and families are breaking down, tearing apart. So definitely, so what do you feel? Why is it important to understand this particular concept?
Well, we're in crisis. And I'll explain what I mean by that.
Okay.
So a marriage is both physical and spiritual.
Right.
Okay, so we're having trouble in the spiritual side of things because we're not aligned with ourselves.
Right.
So then we bring in our mess, to the marriage,
Right,
right?
right.
And then on the physical side of things, we've been distorted. Our perceptions have been distorted
Right.
when it comes to sexuality. So we bring that into the marriage too, and none of it is working.
Okay.
And because the couple is the foundation for society, if we don't have harmony between a couple, then there's no harmony in the family.
Right.
And if that family breaks down, then we have breakdown in our society.
Right.
So really, if we're looking forward, if we're looking where we want to go, We want to create, first of all, start with ourselves,
Okay.
have that harmony with ourselves, our own spiritual integrity. But then we need to have harmony between couples
Right.
so that they thrive, they're happy, they're connected, they turn towards one another.
Right.
And then that family stays intact. Then you can raise your children strong, healthy, give them good examples,
Right.
and set them up for good relationships in the future. Right now, we have become so distorted and off track
Right.
that we're dealing with a crisis. I think this crisis that we're having around sex and sexuality
Right.
is as great as the environmental issue. Because it's the fabric of our society is breaking down
Right.
when we're not able to maintain our connections in our family. It's
Okay.
epidemic. It's
Right.
absolutely epidemic in every part of the world.
Right.
Because there's change. There's a new way of doing things, and we haven't quite figured it out yet.
Great. And in our next episode, we'll just focus on this particular issue which you have raised, because as you said very rightly, you have to be true to yourself, but until unless the partners are true to each other, the foundation of the family gets distorted. And until unless we strive to work on this particular point, which can create a lot of mess in your life, we'll talk about this in our next episode. Thank you very much for your time. Pleasure having you.
Thank you.
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਜੋ ਕੈਲੀ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਾਈ ਜੀ, ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫੋਕਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਡਿਗਨਿਟੀ ਅਤੇ ਸੈਲਫ ਅਸਟੀਮ ਦੀ ਬੜੀ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਹੈ। ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਤਦ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਛਾਣ ਸਕਨੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੇਕਰ ਸਾਡੀ ਸੈਲਫ ਅਸਟੀਮ, ਸਾਡੀ ਡਿਗਨਿਟੀ ਹੋਵੇ। ਅਸੀਂ ਦੂਸਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਟੈਂਡ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਸਿਆਣਾ, ਸਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ, ਪਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨਾਲ ਕਨੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ, ਕਿ ਉਸ ਪਾਸੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਦੀ ਧਿਆਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਦੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਮੂਰਖ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਇਹ ਸਮਝਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿੱਤ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰ ਲਈ, ਪਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਆਪਣੇ ਕੌਨਸ਼ੀਅਸ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਡਿੱਗ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਧਿਆਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ। ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਾਈ ਹੈ ਕੈਲੀ ਨੇ, ਬੜੀ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਵਿਸ਼ਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਵਿਸਥਾਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਸੈਕਸ ਸਟਾਰਵਡ ਮੈਂਟੈਲਿਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਗਈ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਹਸਬੈਂਡ ਵਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਸਨ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਡਿੱਗਦੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਗਲੇ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ। ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਲਈ 604 603 7555। If you have any questions and you would like those to be addressed, please email us at harpreet@akaltv.com or give us a call at 604-603-7555. We'll ask those questions from Kelly and get back to you. ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਧੰਨਵਾਦੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਪਾਂਸਰਸ ਅਤੇ ਐਡਵਰਟਾਈਜ਼ਰਸ ਦੇ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਦੌਲਤ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਦੇ ਨੇ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਕਾਰਨ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਉਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਸਮੂਹ ਟੀਮ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦੀ ਹੈ। ਫਿਰ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਤਦ ਤੱਕ ਗੁੱਡ ਬਾਏ।